The stars were always meant to be a mystery. But for Captain Eva Sinclair and her crew aboard the Orion 9, they were about to unravel secrets far deeper than any of them could have imagined. Eva stood at the helm of the Orion 9, the sleek spacecraft humming softly beneath her as it glided silently through the vastness of the cosmos. A seasoned astronaut, she had seen her fair share of unknowns, unexplained anomalies, strange cosmic phenomena, and unexplored systems. But this was different. "Captain, you need to see this." Lieutenant James Calloway's voice crackled over the comms, sharp with urgency. Eva's brow furrowed as she moved to the observation deck, her boots softly tapping against the metal floor. James was standing in front of a large viewport, staring at something far beyond their craft. His normally calm face was ashen, his usually steady hands trembling. "What is it?" Eva asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. "Look." He pointed toward the stars, or rather, the absence of them. What was supposed to be a vast sea of galaxies, nebulae, and the scattered pinpricks of distant stars, was instead an empty void. A massive region of space, spanning light years, seemed to have been erased from existence, as if something had been carved out of the fabric of the universe itself. Eva's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just empty space, it was a hole that shouldn't exist. It wasn't a black hole, it wasn't an anomaly, it was something far more deliberate. "This can't be happening," James muttered. This is beyond anything we've ever seen. It's like they, whatever they are, took everything out of here." Eva didn't need him to finish the thought. Her mind was already racing. The ship's scanners had been monitoring strange fluctuations in the cosmic background radiation for weeks. Now, those anomalies were making sense. There was something out there, something powerful enough to warp space-time itself. "We need to get to the coordinates," Eva ordered, her voice firm despite the swirling chaos in her mind. "Set course for the center of that void. I want answers." James hesitated but then nodded, quickly inputting the data into the navigation console. "Aye, Captain." Calculating the shortest route. As the ship adjusted its trajectory, Eva gazed out the viewport once more, a strange sense of dread settling in her chest. She had always known that humanity's exploration of space might one day lead them into the unknown, into something beyond their understanding. But this was not just an unknown. This was an invitation to something vast, something ancient, and something dangerous. But she couldn't back down. Not now, not when they were already so far from Earth. The journey toward the anomaly took a matter of days, though it felt as if time itself had begun to stretch and warp the longer they traveled. Space seemed to bend around them in strange ways, twisting and reshaping the familiar into something unrecognizable. The crew grew uneasy, their nerves taut as they watched the universe fold and unfold in unsettling ways. By the time they reached the edge of the void, a heavy silence hung over the crew. They had no way of knowing what lay ahead, no way of preparing for what they would discover. The stars beyond the void were faint pinpricks of light, their glow distorted and twisted by the strange forces at work. "Captain, we're approaching the event horizon of the void," James reported, his voice unusually tense. "Scanners are picking up intense gravitational fluctuations. It's like something is pulling us toward it." Eva gripped the railing by the viewport, her mind racing. This wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It was a force, a deliberate force. "Steady, Lieutenant," she said, trying to keep the tension from her own voice. "We're not turning back now." Ahead of them, the void seemed to ripple and shimmer, like the surface of a vast pool of water disturbed by some unseen force. Then, as they drew closer, the ripples seemed to concentrate, forming a massive, pulsing structure, an artificial construct, or at least something that resembled one. "What in God's name is that?" Lieutenant Sophia Martinez, the ship's engineer, whispered from behind Eva. The structure was enormous, a complex series of interlocking rings and beams, each one radiating with energy beyond anything they had ever encountered. It looked like a giant machine, its purpose unfathomable. But Eva felt it then, a shift in the air, a hum, a pulse. A subtle but undeniable vibration that echoed through the Orion 9, as if the very ship itself was responding to the energy emanating from the structure. "It's calling to us," James said, his voice barely audible. Eva's gaze hardened. She knew that the moment they stepped into the heart of this void, they would be crossing a line. A line between the known and the unknown. Between humanity and something far older, far more advanced. "Prepare for docking," Eva ordered, the weight of her decision settling upon her like a stone. "We need to learn everything we can." Now, as the Orion 9 approached the structure, the surrounding space seemed to bend, as though the very fabric of space-time was being manipulated by an unseen hand. And within the structure, far beyond their reach, something stirred. Something that had been waiting. Back aboard the ship, the crew prepared for what they hoped would be a brief reconnaissance mission, but each of them had a nagging sense that this was no ordinary discovery. As Eva prepared to lead the first away team, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. And they were. Deep within the heart of the machine, behind layers of unthinkable technology, an alien intelligence waited, its consciousness ancient, vast, and calculating. It had been observing humanity for millennia, watching as the species evolved, understanding the unique properties of the human mind. It had long ago determined that the key to their ultimate experiment lay in these fragile creatures, whose thoughts, emotions, and consciousness could be harnessed to manipulate the very forces of the universe. But it needed something more. A catalyst to fuel the convergence of the galaxies, to bring them to a single point in space-time, to form a singularity of unimaginable power. And the humans, the crew of the Orion 9, were about to become an integral part of that plan. The countdown had begun. The crew stood in the shadow of the alien structure, their suits glowing faintly under the dim lights of the docking bay. The moment they had touched down, the ship's systems had gone silent, a strange calm settling over them. Eva led the way, stepping out of the airlock and into the unknown. The inside of the structure was unlike anything they had ever encountered, an organic-like matrix of shifting walls and corridors, seemingly alive with pulsating light. It was both beautiful and terrifying, an unsettling harmony of alien technology and biology fused together in ways that defied logic. "I've never seen anything like this," Sophia muttered, her voice reverberating inside her helmet as she scanned the walls with her handheld device. Eva didn't answer right away. She was too focused on the strange sensation running down her spine. It was as though the structure was watching them, waiting for them to make a move. She couldn't shake the feeling that this place, this vast, intricate thing, was far more than just a machine. It was alive in some way. It had a purpose, and they were part of that purpose. "Stay sharp, everyone," Eva ordered. "We're here to gather data. Nothing more." They moved forward, the faint hum of the structure vibrating through their bodies. The corridors curved in ways that didn't seem possible, twisting back on themselves, creating a disorienting labyrinth. The crew couldn't tell if the walls were changing shape or if they were just losing their sense of direction. They had already spent hours exploring, but the further they went, the more unnerving it became. "What is this place, Captain?" Lieutenant Calloway asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Eva didn't have an answer. She wasn't even sure if the walls themselves knew. All she could think of was the sense of purpose that seemed to hang in the air, an unspoken understanding that they were walking through the veins of something far more ancient than anything humanity could comprehend. Finally, they came upon a massive chamber. It was so large that even their helmets couldn't capture the full scale. In the center stood a massive column, its surface rippling with some sort of energy. The air crackled with static as they approached it, and there, embedded within the column, was a shimmering crystal-like object, glowing with an otherworldly light. "This is it," Sophia said, awe in her voice. "This is what's controlling the structure." Eva took a step closer, her pulse quickening. She reached out, her fingers hovering inches from the crystal, but something stopped her. It wasn't a physical force, but an instinct, a warning that whispered in her mind to keep her distance. Yet, the pull of curiosity was too strong. She extended her hand toward it. As soon as her fingers made contact with the crystal, the entire room shifted. The walls seemed to breathe, and a series of symbols appeared in midair, their shapes unfamiliar but somehow understandable. Eva felt her mind flood with visions. Visions of galaxies spinning, colliding, and merging into one. She saw the core of stars collapsing, supernovae erupting in brilliant displays of energy. The images overwhelmed her senses, and she staggered backward, gasping for air. "Captain?" James's voice reached her, his concern clear. "What happened?" I saw something." Eva's voice trembled, but she quickly steadied herself. It was like a cosmic blueprint. Galaxies, entire systems, being brought together, drawn toward a singular point. Sophia stepped closer to the crystal, her gaze focused on the strange symbols. "It's a map. A blueprint of space itself." But Eva didn't hear the rest of her words. She was too absorbed in the vision. The crystal seemed to call to her, showing her a web of interconnected events, lines of probability, of cause and effect, all leading to a singular outcome. A single event, an experiment, vast in scale, unfolding in the deepest reaches of space. In the chaos of her mind, one phrase echoed louder than the rest: convergence. Her breath caught in her throat. "Captain?" Sophia's voice broke through the haze. "What's happening?" Eva blinked and looked up, realizing that her hand was still pressed against the crystal. Her mind was reeling, the vision beginning to fade, but the meaning was clear now. The alien race that had built this structure was trying to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. They were trying to collapse multiple galaxies into one singularity, a massive, unfathomable source of energy that could bend the very fabric of reality. And humans were not just witnesses. They were part of the experiment. Eva paused, struggling to find her words. "We need to get back to the ship. Now." The crew quickly turned, but as they moved toward the exit, something caught Eva's eye. It was a small alcove in the far corner of the chamber, barely visible, hidden behind layers of shifting light. There, nestled in the shadows, was a row of strange devices, human-sized capsules. They looked like nothing more than pods, but as Eva stepped closer, a realization struck her. These weren't just machines. These were vessels, alive vessels. Sophia, noticing her hesitation, approached and scanned the pods with her equipment. "Wait a minute. These readings, Captain, these aren't just standard tech. These are biological." Eva's heart raced as the truth began to take shape. The pods weren't designed for exploration or research. They were designed to hold living beings. Humans. It all clicked into place. The human mind, the consciousness, was the catalyst. The aliens had been using humans for centuries as vessels, tapping into their mental energy, their emotions, their consciousness, in order to fuel their experiment. To manipulate space-time, to converge entire galaxies into one. And they had been using the crew of the Orion 9 without them even knowing it. The ship, the crew, they were all part of a grand plan. A plan that was now set in motion. "We need to leave. Now," Eva shouted, pulling the crew toward the exit, the weight of their discovery heavy on her shoulders. But as they retraced their steps, the corridors began to change. The walls twisted and shifted, trapping them in a maze of endless passages. The countdown had begun, and there was no way to stop it. "Get to the ship," Eva ordered, her voice filled with urgency. "We have to stop the experiment before it's too late." But even as they moved, the hum of the structure grew louder, more insistent, as if the machine itself was waking up. And somewhere deep within its core, the alien intelligence smiled. The crew rushed back through the twisting corridors, their footsteps echoing louder as the structure seemed to shift and groan around them. Eva led the way, her breath shallow with panic, her heart pounding in her chest. The walls were no longer just a maze, they felt alive, as if the structure itself were resisting their escape, pulling them deeper into its grasp. "Captain," James called out from behind her, his voice strained. "We can't just keep running blindly like this. We need a plan." Eva's mind raced, her thoughts scrambling for a solution. Every instinct told her that they were running out of time. This was no longer just about discovering an alien structure. They were caught in a cosmic scheme that far exceeded their understanding, and every step they took brought them closer to an inevitable disaster. "We need to get back to the Orion 9, she said, her voice steady despite the rising panic. "We'll figure out what's going on there. It's our only chance." "Agreed," James replied, his voice sharp. "But we need to get past this damn maze first." Sophia, scanning the environment with her tech, was the first to speak up. "Wait, something's happening. The structure's shifting, like it's responding to our movement." The corridors. Before she could finish, the floor beneath them trembled, and the walls around them began to close in, narrowing their path. The crew stopped dead in their tracks, hearts racing as the narrow corridors seemed to grow even smaller, the air growing thick with a strange, almost suffocating pressure. "We need to move, now," Eva shouted, her pulse quickening as the walls continued to contract. They turned, running down the path they had just come, but every step seemed to bring them farther away from where they needed to be. It was as though the structure itself was fighting them, trying to trap them within its vast, organic core. And then they heard it, the hum, growing louder, deeper, more resonant, vibrating through their bodies as though it was coming from the very core of the machine. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with energy, responding to the sound as if it were an ancient rhythm, a heartbeat of some unknowable intelligence. "There's no way out," Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "The structure's alive." "It's alive?" James interrupted, panic rising in his voice. "What do you mean by that?" "It's not just a machine," Sophia explained breathlessly. "It's part biological, part technological. It's a living entity." Eva felt the dread gnaw at her insides as she realized the full implication of Sophia's words. The structure wasn't just alien. It was the heart of an intelligence that had been shaping the universe for eons. And now it was shaping their fate. Before she could respond, the hum of the machine reached a deafening crescendo. The walls around them began to vibrate violently, and the lights flickered in time with the pulse. Suddenly, the corridor ahead of them shifted again, opening into a vast, spherical chamber. The air grew colder, the atmosphere thick with the weight of something ancient, something vast. "What the hell is this?" James breathed, his voice filled with awe and terror. At the center of the chamber stood a massive, pulsating energy core, suspended in mid-air. It crackled with unimaginable power, radiating light and energy that sent ripples through the very fabric of space-time. The crew froze, staring at the core, knowing instinctively that this was the heart of the machine, and the heart of the alien intelligence. Eva felt the familiar pull again, the call, like a whisper in her mind, urging her to come closer, urging her to understand. And she couldn't ignore it. She stepped forward, her feet moving of their own accord. "Captain, what are you doing?" James called after her, his voice shaking with fear. I need to see it," Eva murmured, her eyes locked on the core. The moment her foot touched the floor of the chamber, the energy in the room surged, and a voice, low and resonant, like the rumble of thunder, filled her mind. "You are the catalyst." Eva's entire body froze as the voice echoed through her skull. The words didn't just speak to her, they resonated deep within her very being. She could feel the meaning of the words settling into her consciousness, like an ancient truth she hadn't known she possessed. The voice continued, its tone distant and almost cold, yet somehow familiar. "You're kind. You are the key, the catalyst to the convergence. The singularity awaits. You will bring it into being." Eva's breath caught in her throat, and she turned to face her crew, her eyes wide with realization. "It's us. They've been using us, our minds. The human mind is the catalyst they need to manipulate space-time. They need us to power the convergence." Sophia shook her head in disbelief. "That doesn't make sense. Why us? Why humans?" Eva's voice was barely a whisper. We special. Our minds, our consciousness, it's unlike any other species. The aliens, this intelligence, they knew that, even before we knew it ourselves. But this experiment, it's going to destroy everything, James said, his voice filled with horror. If they bring all those galaxies together, if they cause a singularity, it'll tear everything apart. Eva's gaze flickered back to the core, and the truth was undeniable now. The convergence wasn't just an experiment, it was a weapon. A weapon designed to harness an unfathomable amount of energy, enough to bend and break the very laws of reality. And the countdown had already begun. "We have to stop this," Eva said, her voice cold with determination. "We need to find a way to shut it down before it's too late." Sophia's eyes were wide with fear. "But how? We don't even understand how this thing works. How do we fight something like this?" Eva's mind was spinning, but in that moment, one thought echoed louder than the rest. They didn't need to fight it. They needed to stop it from using them. "I think," Eva started, but she was cut off by a sudden, violent tremor in the room. The core pulsed brighter, the walls shook, and the hum of the structure grew louder. The countdown was accelerating, and they were running out of time. The tremors reverberated through Eva's body, rattling her bones, as the core pulsed faster, brighter, more urgently. The entire chamber seemed to be alive with a hum that vibrated through the air and into the deepest corners of their minds. It was impossible to ignore now. The structure, the alien intelligence, it was actively drawing them in, connecting to them in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. "Captain," James shouted, pulling her from her thoughts. "We need to leave, now." But Eva couldn't tear her eyes away from the energy core. It was not just a source of power. It was the key, the nexus of everything the aliens had been planning. And the truth, once whispered to her mind, now thrummed in her chest like a relentless drumbeat. The aliens weren't just using humanity. They were harvesting their consciousness, their very essence, to fuel the destruction of the universe itself. She turned sharply, her voice resolute. "We can't run. We need to stop this." Sophia, her face pale behind her helmet, grabbed Eva by the shoulder, her eyes wide with fear. "Captain, we have no idea what we're dealing with. We're already in over our heads. This machine, it's more than we can fight. If we get any closer to the core, we'll..." "I know," Eva cut her off, her voice tight with urgency. "But the longer we stay here, the faster the countdown accelerates. If we don't act, everything will collapse. Everything we know, everything that exists, will be obliterated by the singularity they're trying to create." A deep shudder passed through the room, followed by an almost imperceptible shift in the core's energy. The symbols, the patterns, the strange geometry they had glimpsed earlier were now swirling around them in a dizzying dance, flashing before their eyes in rapid succession. They weren't just observing it anymore, it was actively communicating with them. "Look," James said, pointing at the symbols now swirling around them in the air. "It's trying to talk to us." Eva's heart raced as the alien language filled the air around them. It was incomprehensible, foreign, but there was an undeniable thread running through it, something urgent. It wanted them to understand, to become part of the equation. A voice, not from the core this time but inside Eva's mind, pierced through the chaos. "The convergence is inevitable. You will be the vessel that leads the galaxies to their meeting point. Only your minds can feed the singularity." Eva staggered back, clutching her helmet as the weight of the revelation sank in. The human mind. It wasn't just a tool for manipulation. It was the necessary conduit through which the energy of multiple galaxies would be funneled. Humanity was not only the key to their plan, it was the very mechanism that would make the catastrophe possible. "We've been used," Sophia whispered, as realization dawned on her too. "They've been using us for generations, for this experiment." Eva's fists clenched. She refused to accept that humanity had been reduced to pawns in a cosmic game. Not after all they had achieved. Not after all the sacrifices they had made to explore the stars. "We have to shut this thing down," Eva said again, more fiercely now. "We can't let them turn us into tools for destruction." "But how?" James asked. "We don't even know what triggers it, what shuts it down." "The energy, Its power is unimaginable. We can't even begin to understand how to stop it. Eva turned. Her eyes locked onto the core. Its light flared again, growing brighter, pushing them back with an invisible force. There was only one way she could think of, only one chance left. We stop the flow, Eva said, her voice coming out slowly, measured. We stop the flow of energy before the convergence reaches critical mass. The core, it's the conduit. If we destroy it, we sever the connection between the galaxies and the singularity. But we need to act quickly. Sophia's eyes widened. You want to destroy that thing? The core is. It's beyond any tech we've seen. It's not even mechanical, it's alive. If we try to destroy it. I know, Eva said, cutting her off. It's our only option. The walls of the chamber began to pulse more violently, the energy building in intensity. Eva's hands trembled as she realized that the countdown wasn't just accelerating, it was already nearing its final stages. They didn't have much time. Where do we start? James asked, his voice tinged with desperation. Eva didn't hesitate. The structure is part biological, part technological. If we disable the central nodes of the system, we can stop the energy flow. There's one way to do that, but it's risky. Sophia frowned, scanning the chamber with her equipment. What way? We're running out of time, Captain. Eva turned, her gaze steely. We overload the system. We trigger a feedback loop that will destroy the central core. But it has to be done from the inside. James shook his head. You're talking about self-destructing the whole damn thing. You know what that means, right? If we do that, we won't just shut down the experiment. We'll take everything with us. This entire structure could collapse. Eva nodded grimly. I know, but at least we'll stop them from completing their plan. At least we'll save everything that's left. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of their decision hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The chamber around them pulsed, its rhythm growing faster, more insistent. It was alive, and it was running out of time. Eva turned toward the glowing core, her mind already calculating the risks. She had made up her mind. This was their only chance. There was no more room for hesitation. Let's do it, she said firmly. We'll overload the system from the central core. Sophia, can you access the interface? Find the control points. Sophia nodded, quickly running through her equipment's diagnostics. I'll try, but this thing's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not just technology, it's alive, and I don't know how it'll react. Eva looked at her crew, one last time, each of them standing at the edge of the impossible. We'll have to make it work. We don't have any other choice. With that, they moved toward the central platform where the core hovered. As they approached, the energy in the room intensified, and the alien voice echoed once again inside their minds. You cannot stop what is coming. Eva clenched her teeth, steeling herself for what was to come. We'll see about that. The chamber was alive with an energy that felt almost tangible, the air thick with the hum of power pulsing from the core at its center. Each step Eva and her crew took seemed to reverberate through the space, vibrating the very molecules in their bodies. They were moving deeper into the heart of the machine, deeper into the entity that had been manipulating them all along. The walls, once just a part of a structure, now felt like they were breathing, responding to their every movement, their every thought. Sophia was already at the console. Her fingers danced across the interface with a grace born from years of training, but there was something in the way the system resisted her touch, like it was aware of her every move, as though it was fighting back against her intrusion. The alien language, the strange symbols, pulsed behind her eyes as she worked. This isn't a machine, Sophia muttered, her voice thick with disbelief. It's an organism, a living entity using technology as its veins and arteries. Everything here, every part of it is interconnected, like the nervous system of something massive. She paused, looking up from the screen. This is not just a structure, it's a consciousness. Eva's eyes flickered toward her. We knew that already. Just keep working. We don't have much time. The countdown was still ticking down faster than before. Each second that passed felt like an eternity, the tension in the air building to a fever pitch. James moved cautiously around the room, keeping a wary eye on the shifting walls, the glowing patterns that seemed to move of their own accord. "We need to hurry, Sophia. I'm not sure how much longer this place will hold together." Eva nodded, turning her focus back to the core in the center of the room. It pulsed, almost beckoning, but there was something else, something darker. The longer they stayed near it, the more it felt as if it were feeding off of them, draining their energy, pulling at their minds. Sophia's voice broke through the haze of unease. "I've found something. There are nodes, energy conduits embedded throughout the core. If we overload these conduits, we can destabilize the whole system. It'll trigger a cascade reaction that should shut it down." "But there's a catch," Eva's heart sank. "What do you mean, a catch?" Sophia hesitated. "The cascade will trigger a self-destruct sequence. If we don't get out in time, the entire structure, and probably the surrounding space, will be obliterated. We're talking about a chain reaction that will tear apart everything. We'll be caught in the collapse." James cursed under his breath. "So there's no way to stop it without sacrificing ourselves." "That's what I'm saying," Sophia replied, her voice strained. "But it's the only way we can stop the convergence. If this thing completes its process, if it starts pulling those galaxies into a singularity, the consequences won't just be catastrophic. It'll tear apart the fabric of space-time itself." Eva took a deep breath, letting the weight of the decision settle in her chest. She had been preparing for this, mentally steeling herself for the worst, but hearing it from Sophia's mouth made it all the more real. The fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy, rested on their shoulders. "Then we have no choice," Eva said, her voice unwavering. "We'll overload the core, but we need to do it together. One wrong move, and this entire place will implode before we can even reach the ship." Sophia gave a sharp nod. "I'll need you to be close to me. We'll need to synchronize the detonation sequence. If any part of the core remains stable, the chain reaction will fail." James stepped forward, his face set in grim determination. "Let's just get it done." The crew moved into position, positioning themselves around the central console. The core's energy was palpable now, a magnetic force that tugged at them, pulling them toward it. It was almost hypnotic, the steady hum reverberating through their skulls, whispering promises of power, of knowledge, of untold destruction. Sophia's fingers flew across the controls, aligning the energy nodes, calculating the exact moment to trigger the overload. Her breath came fast, shallow, as though the very act of interfacing with the core was draining her energy. The alien voice echoed once more inside Eva's mind, colder now, more insistent. "You cannot stop it. The convergence is inevitable." "Shut up," Eva hissed under her breath, as her mind fought to hold on to her focus. She could feel it now, the same connection to the core that had drawn her in earlier, as though it were trying to invade her thoughts, to sway her. Sophia shot her a glance, sweat trickling down her face. "We're almost there. Just a few more seconds." Eva tightened her grip on her weapon, a silent promise to herself. They had to finish this. They had to make sure the experiment never reached its conclusion. The countdown reached its final moments. They could feel it. The tension in the air, the electric hum of the core's growing energy, the undeniable pull of the singularity trying to form. And then, Sophia's voice cut through the rising crescendo of energy. "It's ready." Eva glanced at James. "Get to the exit, now." Without another word, the team split, each heading in a separate direction, making a break for the exit. The air in the chamber crackled with tension, the walls warping as if the very fabric of space was beginning to unravel. Sophia's voice was the last thing they heard. Triggering now, the room exploded with a deafening sound, a blinding pulse of energy that sent shockwaves through the structure. Eva barely had time to react, instinctively diving toward the exit as the walls collapsed around them, the whole chamber shaking violently. The force of the blast threw them forward, and Eva found herself crashing to the ground, her vision spinning. Through the chaos, She could hear the hum of the core, now a frantic, erratic pulse. The countdown had reached 0. "We need to move, now," Eva shouted, pulling herself up and grabbing James's arm as he struggled to stand. Sophia was already ahead of them, racing toward the ship. The corridors around them began to collapse in on themselves, the structure itself starting to fall apart as the overload triggered the chain reaction. Pieces of the alien architecture were being torn away, swirling in the air like debris caught in the vacuum of space. They had to get to the ship. They had to make it out. As they reached the airlock, Eva glanced back once more, watching as the entire structure began to implode. The walls buckled, folding in on themselves, and a blinding flash of light filled the space. For a split second, she thought they wouldn't make it, but then, they were in the airlock. The door sealed behind them, and the Orion 9 engines roared to life. The explosion in the distance was deafening, a final flash that consumed the alien structure in a brilliant blaze of light. Eva slumped into her seat, her breath ragged, her body still trembling from the shock. They were alive. They had stopped the convergence. But at what cost? The silence in the cockpit was overwhelming. "We did it," James said, voice low. Eva didn't answer. She just stared at the wreckage of the alien structure, watching the last remnants of their experiment burn up in space. But in the back of her mind, a chilling thought lingered. The Orion 9 drifted in the vast emptiness of space, suspended in the wake of the explosion that had consumed the alien structure. The aftershock reverberated through the ship's hull, and the crew sat in stunned silence, each of them processing the reality of what they had just done. Eva sat at the helm, her hands gripping the controls as her mind raced. The flash of light, the deafening blast, the way the entire alien structure had crumbled in on itself, it should have felt like a victory. But something inside her gnawed at her, a sense of unease that refused to leave. "We're alive," James said quietly, breaking the silence. But what?" Sophia asked, her voice tight with exhaustion. James turned his gaze to the dark void outside, his face illuminated only by the dim glow of the control panel. "But was it enough? Did we really stop it, or did we just slow it down for a little while?" Sophia looked at him sharply. "You're not saying..." "No, I'm not saying it's over. But think about it," James continued. "The structure was alive. It was part of something far bigger than just a machine. What if the convergence is still happening, in a different form? What if we just triggered a different phase of the experiment?" Eva closed her eyes for a moment, rubbing her temples as if to dispel the headache building there. "We did what we could. The core was destabilized. The chain reaction should have destroyed everything tied to that structure. If there's anything left, it's beyond our reach now." "I don't know, Captain," Sophia said, her voice hesitant. "I mean, the way that thing connected to us. How it used our minds. How it manipulated our consciousness. It felt like it was more than just technology, more than just a plan. Like it was, listening to us. Learning from us." James nodded grimly. "What if it's still out there, trying to find another way?" The weight of their conversation hung in the air like a cloud of tension, thick and suffocating. Eva felt the same unease gnawing at her from the inside, but she refused to let it show. They had fought hard to stop the convergence, but deep down, a part of her feared that the alien intelligence had already planted the seeds for something far worse. "We won't know until we get back to Earth," Eva said, breaking the silence. "We need to report what happened, prepare for any contingency. We don't know if we've destroyed the singularity, or if we've just postponed it." Sophia's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "But what if the consequences of what we did are already rippling through space? What if we triggered something irreversible? I'm not just talking about the structure. I'm talking about everything. The fabric of space-time, the fabric of the universe itself." Eva's gaze hardened. She had thought about that too. The idea that their actions might have created a new kind of disaster, one that no one could foresee, lingered in her mind like a shadow. "Whatever happens," Eva said slowly, "we're in this together. We're going to make sure the truth is known. We'll figure out what's really going on." But we need to get back to Earth, and we need to do it fast. The words had the desired effect. They all nodded, each of them silently agreeing to the resolve in Eva's voice. They had made a choice. Now they had to live with the consequences. As the Orion 9 began its course back toward Earth, the ship seemed eerily quiet. The stars outside were distant pinpricks of light in the endless black, and the vastness of space felt even more infinite now, as though the crew was drifting through an unknown, unknowable void. Hours passed in silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts. The stress of the mission, the terror of the unknown, had taken its toll. And yet, despite their exhaustion, they all knew that the true weight of what they had done, and what they might still have to face, was far from over. Sophia was the first to break the silence, her voice suddenly sharp with urgency. "Captain, I'm picking up something. A signal. It's faint, but it's definitely there." Eva's heart skipped a beat. She turned to face Sophia, who was hunched over the console, her fingers flying across the screen as she tried to pinpoint the source of the signal. "What kind of signal?" Eva asked, a sense of dread creeping up her spine. It's coming from deep space," Sophia replied, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "Far outside the range of any known satellite, almost on the edge of the galaxy." James stepped forward, peering over Sophia's shoulder. "Could it be another alien vessel?" Sophia shook her head, her brow furrowed. "I don't think so. It's not a normal transmission. It's more like a ripple. A fluctuation in space-time." Eva's breath caught. "A fluctuation in space-time?" "Yes," Sophia confirmed. "Like a pulse, almost as if something large is moving, shifting, through the fabric of reality itself." Eva stood, her gaze fixed on the display. "Can you trace it? Where is it coming from?" Sophia didn't answer immediately, her fingers moving in a flurry of commands as the readings began to clarify. Then, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, she said, "It's coming from the direction of the explosion, the alien structure. But, it's not just from the structure itself. It's as if the entire region around it, around the galaxy, has been affected. Like the shockwaves from the destruction have reached further than we could have ever imagined." James stepped back, his face pale. "You mean the singularity? The thing we tried to stop? It's not just a threat anymore. It's spreading." Eva felt the air in the room grow thick with tension. This wasn't just a warning, it was an invitation. They had unleashed something, not just an alien experiment, but an effect that would ripple across the universe, infecting everything it touched. "Captain," Sophia's voice was strained, full of fear. "Whatever we did, we've triggered something far bigger than we could have ever imagined. We didn't stop the convergence. We set it in motion." The walls of the Orion 9 seemed to hum with the unnatural tension that had built up between the crew. Eva stood frozen at the helm, her mind racing, every instinct telling her they were too late, that the destruction they had tried to prevent had already begun. The alien signal, the ripple in space-time, was more than just an aftershock, it was a harbinger. The consequences of their actions had gone beyond the alien structure, beyond the core. Something far darker, far more insidious, was unfolding in the very fabric of the universe itself. Sophia turned back to the console, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't understand this. The signal. It's not just a fluctuation. It's as if the space-time continuum itself is breaking apart." Eva's heart pounded. "Are you saying that what we did, what we thought we destroyed, it's causing rifts in the very nature of reality?" Sophia nodded, her face pale, her voice trembling with fear. "Yes, that's exactly it. It's as if we've torn a hole in space-time, one that's slowly growing. And it's not just an isolated event. This pulse is radiating out, affecting everything around us." James stepped forward, his face grim. "How far is it reaching? How much time do we have before it spreads beyond our control?" Eva looked at the dark expanse outside the ship. Her thoughts were a blur. She had never imagined that their actions would have this kind of far-reaching effect. When they detonated the core, they thought they were destroying the machine. stopping the alien plan before it could reach its conclusion. But now it seemed as though they had triggered a chain reaction, one that had sent shockwaves through the very foundations of space itself. "I don't know," Sophia said, her fingers flying over the console. "But I can tell you this, it's not just radiating outward. It's warping the surrounding space, pulling things out of alignment. Stars, galaxies, everything in this region is being affected. If this continues, we could see entire star systems pulled into gravitational collapse, or worse, torn apart by the growing rift." James swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. "You mean a singularity? The kind of thing we were trying to prevent?" Sophia looked up at him, her expression hollow. "Worse, it's not just one singularity. It's multiple points of collapse, all connected, all feeding into each other. The rift is growing, and if it reaches critical mass, it could unravel the entire galaxy." Eva clenched her fists. "How do we stop it?" Sophia shook her head, her hands trembling as she looked at the readings on the screen. "We can't. I don't think we can. Not unless we find the source of the rift and close it. But even then, we might not have the power to fix what we've done." James was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the blinking indicators that filled the console. "We need to warn Earth. We need to get this information back home. If we don't, they'll never understand the full scope of what we've unleashed. They won't have a chance to prepare." Eva hesitated. "And if we don't stop it, Earth might be the first to feel the rift's effects. We've already seen how the structure was manipulating human minds. If it's still connected to us somehow." Her voice trailed off. The thought was unbearable. If the rift's influence spread further, humanity could fall victim to the alien intelligence once more. Only this time, it wouldn't just be an experiment. It would be the end of everything they knew. Sophia's eyes flickered with something between fear and determination. "If we can't stop it from here, maybe there's another way. We've been focusing on the immediate threat, the alien structure. But what if the source of the rift isn't just something we can destroy? What if it's a part of something bigger, something that spans across the universe?" Eva blinked, trying to make sense of Sophia's words. "What are you saying?" Sophia turned to her, urgency in her voice. "What if the aliens didn't just create the convergence, they initiated it? What if the rift we're seeing isn't just a side effect of their experiment, but the actual result of their manipulation of space-time?" James frowned. "So, you're saying the aliens didn't just want to create a singularity. They wanted to tear apart the entire universe and reshape it?" Sophia nodded slowly. "Exactly. The signal we're detecting, it's not random. It's not an accident. It's a message, a call. They're trying to open a path. And if we don't find a way to block it, that path will lead straight into the heart of the universe itself." Eva's mind raced, connecting the pieces. The aliens had been trying to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. They had been using humanity as vessels in their experiment, but now it seemed like the real plan wasn't just to observe, it was to alter reality itself. To collapse the universe and rebuild it according to their own design. "How do we stop it?" Eva asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophia stood still for a moment, her mind working through the possibilities. "I don't know, but I do know one thing. If the rift keeps spreading, it'll eventually collapse everything. We have to find a way to stabilize the distortion." Eva's eyes narrowed as a sudden thought occurred to her. The human mind. They were using us. What if the key to stopping this isn't in some kind of alien technology, but in us, our consciousness? James looked at her, confusion written across his face. "What do you mean?" "Think about it," Eva said, her voice becoming more resolute. "The aliens were using our minds as vessels. What if our minds are the key to stabilizing this? If we were able to harness that power, our consciousness might be able to counteract the rift, to seal it." Maybe they never anticipated that. Sophia's eyes widened. "You think we could somehow use our mental connection to the rift to reverse it?" Eva nodded. "We have to try. We can't let this spiral out of control. If we don't, everything is lost. It's our only shot." Without another word, Eva turned to the navigation console, setting a course toward the center of the rift. The signal from the alien experiment had grown stronger, more defined, and it was clear now that it was not just a malfunction or random interference. It was the heart of the disturbance, the center of the rift. If this works, Sophia said, her voice low with dread, it could either stop the rift, or make it worse. We don't have a choice, Eva replied, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. We either stop it now, or we let the universe collapse under its weight. And I'm not going to let that happen. As they approached the source of the rift, the Orion 9 shook violently, as if the very fabric of space itself was fighting back. The crew strapped themselves in, each of them bracing for the unknown. Eva's heart raced. The universe was on the edge of collapse, and they were the only ones who could stop it. They had one last chance, and this time, there would be no turning back.